Pericles, Panos, and the Shadowsmiths are finally stepping into the limelight as the antagonists for Janus Towers DLC 4 of Black Ops 6 Zombies. We have spent literally months theorizing and discussing these characters and wondering if and when they would make an appearance in Black Ops 6. And now, after some of the new intel in Shattered Veil, I think we finally have our answer. So let's talk the new intel on what could be the Shadowsmiths, just who Panos is talking to, and what they are capable of. And potentially even teases the return of the Shadow Man, and even how a new version of Richtofen for COD 2025 may be throwing a spanner in the works. All of that and more in this video, so stay tuned and don't miss anything. We've talked before at length on both the Shadowsmiths and the various potential connections that Panos might have had using what info we could scrape together from the launch of the game and Liberty Falls Easter egg, which will be linked down below if you want to check it out after this one if you need a refresher. But we will still cover most of the important information here, but just remember that if you feel like you are missing context somewhere, check out the videos below on the topics we've done before. Let's start with Panos and his mysterious contact in Liberty Falls. Last time, we laid out the evidence, crunched the intel and Panos' various ambient dialogue, and came up with a short list of candidates for who his contact may be. But thanks to some fresh intel from Shattered Veil, the picture is shifting, and it's time to reassess our prior theories and conclusions. So let's recap what we knew, then adjust the lens with the new information in mind. Before, we established that Panos' contact had to meet some specific criteria based on his dialogue throughout the Liberty Falls main quest and ambient lines. This person or entity had to have gone to university, spent significant time in the Dark Aether, to be something that he questioned if he would become like, having been in there. They must have known about Richtofen but didn't hate him, had friends outside of the Dark Aether for Panos to contact after escaping, been smart enough to help design the SDG machine, and powerful enough to assist Panos in potentially taking out the other Janus scientists that we see dead all over the map. We ran through the audio evidence, like Panos saying,
"Okay, calm down. I guess you and I had very different experiences at university."
And,
"No, I don't hate him. I don't think you do either."
Tying them to Richtofen in some way or another. Our frontrunner back then was none other than the real Samantha Maxis herself. She checked every box, had studied at Heidelberg University on her resume, has been trapped in the Dark Aether since Black Ops Cold War, has had a complicated history with Richtofen, not necessarily hatred, although we don't know for sure, but definitely baggage, and of course had friends like Weaver, Grey, and the Terminus crew waiting on the outside. Plus she has the smarts to potentially assist in building the SDG, and the sheer power to back Panos up. But I also threw out some wildcards, such as Ultimis Richtofen himself, with him similarly studying at Heidelberg University back in the Aether days, and of course has the Dark Aether know-how, again due to the Aether days and even having been in control of the Aether at one point in time. We even threw out the idea of could it potentially even be Zykov, the shapeshifter from Cold War, though Ultimis Richtofen felt like a stretch since he should be long gone. Of course he died at the end of Tag the Totem, whilst we might see future iterations of Richtofen, not Ultimis directly. And Zykov seemed extremely unlikely, as he is seemingly mindlessly trapped inside of the SAM AI orb, powering her. My favourite theory at launch, though, was the SAM AI, this mimic of Samantha, created by Richtofen, and I theorized how she could have been manipulating Panos by pretending to be the original Samantha for her plans of snagging the Sentinel artifact to build a body and step into our world. If her plan had gone to fruition without the hitch of the crew escaping the liminal space with Richtofen in Shattered Veil, and Panos hadn't been freed, then she would have accomplished her plans without the help of any humans. My assumption at the time was she'd probably need at least one person helping her since she had no physical body, and that was the plan for fooling Panos, to do his dirty work. But now, the Shattered Veil intel drops a bombshell that flips the script.
He came to me again, my friend, my benefactor, my salvation. Time is strange in this place. A moment ago I was in the church. A moment ago he was here with me. In another moment, who knows? Like the director, he came with promises, power, forbidden knowledge, a reckoning for my enemies. But unlike the director, his mastery of the Dark Aether is real. And what's more, he promised me a way out. When I return to the world, I will be his agent. The future he speaks of, the one we will fashion together. I can hardly wait. In only a moment, we begin.
In the Shadow Benefactor transcript, Panos says, "He came to me again, my friend, my benefactor, my salvation." For the very first time, this mysterious contact is described as a he, using masculine pronouns, whereas before we never had any usage of gendered pronouns to describe them, so they could have been a man, woman, or otherwise. This is huge and changes our perspective completely. Samantha Maxis, our prime suspect, is now axed out of the running, and the Sam AI, since she's mimicking Samantha herself, is also now no longer a contender. Panos goes on in this passage saying, like the director, he came with promises, power, forbidden knowledge, a reckoning for my enemies. But unlike the director, his mastery of the Dark Aether is real. And what's more, he promised me a way out. This means the character also has a real power over the Dark Aether, especially considering Blanche's intel about Panos in Shattered Veil.
John Blanchard reporting my preliminary sweep of Liberty Falls since the loss of our strike team. It doesn't look like planet Earth out here. Something is taking over. The air is heavy, almost corrosive. It hangs on everything. I feel like I'm choking just standing in it. I can barely think. Liberty Falls is gone. It's a boiling pot of chaos. We have to stop it from spilling over. Fucking Panos. What the hell did he do to my team? And who the fuck was he talking to? It's like he's possessed. He's part of the chaos now. Which means I have to stop him from spreading too. Motion-activated camera showed him arriving at Janus Towers right before it shorted out. Once I'm done here, I'll chase him down and put a bullet right in his crown.
So who's left for contenders now? The new intel suggests two big possibilities. First, and I have to say it, Richtofen could potentially be back in the play. Not as laughably impossible as being Ultimis Richtofen himself as we theorized in that first video, but maybe some sort of parallel to Ultimis Richtofen, who would have the university credentials, a tangled history with himself, the Eddie Janus Richtofen kind that definitely isn't hatred, and he's of course no stranger to Dark Aether technology. Remember the dark mechanism from Blood of the Dead? It's eerily similar to the SDG, using life essence to bust someone out of the Dark Aether, as Primus Richtofen's blood was harvested to allow portals for Primus to escape. The exact same thing happens in Liberty Falls ending. The strike team and Zombies' essence is harvested to allow Panos out with a portal. And the orbs on both machines look almost one-to-one. This is clearly an intentional parallel, and most of the evidence in Blood of the Dead seems to point towards Richtofen, probably the Ultimis Richtofen one, having helped the Warden design it for the Shadow Man, as they were both acting as apprentices for them. For example, in the alternative Mob of the Dead loading screen we get in the comic books, it seems to show Ultimis Richtofen greeting the Warden in the laboratory. The Liberty Falls line about very different experiences at university could fit if Panos is chatting with an alternative Richtofen who's seen some wild stuff. But there's a snag. Would Richtofen really have friends on the outside after all of this time? Maybe the brand new original characters, crew, especially considering their rumored return this year for Call of Duty 2025 Black Ops 7 has been leaked for quite some time. It's definitely now a far more likely possibility than the last time we discussed this. I could also see them potentially having Richtofen, this new one from COD 2025, working with the SHADOWSMITHs in some respect, at least during the events of Black Ops 6. Perhaps he isn't even aware of their full plans, or they later betray him, which is the start of their leaked plan to use the original character's essence to restore the multiverse. Potentially, the SHADOWSMITHs are using this new version of Richtofen for COD 2025, promising him a return outside of the Dark Aether if he now exists just as a soul in a liminal space. Potentially, they're getting him through PANOS to do their bidding to attempt to restore the multiverse, but he will get backstabbed and just trapped, left there for dead for his and the rest of the original character's essence to be harvested from liminal spaces, leading to the conflict of COD 2025. This would set up the new Richtofen with a connection to the SHADOWSMITHs and a mysterious past, so it's worth keeping in mind. The other option is what seems to be the leader of the SHADOWSMITHs, the hat-wearing, shadowy entity from the Modern Warfare Zombies ending. The Shadow Benefactor intel title screams a connection, and Panos' line about his mastery of the Dark Aether is real fits a being who's basically a Dark Aether native. But that Dark Aether native demon thing also presents us with one big issue here that throws a wrench in the otherwise most obvious candidate, that university line. How does a shadowy demon elder god thing enroll in college? Unless maybe he's not a demon from birth. Maybe he's someone who became a SHADOWSMITH, someone once human, with an education, who's now ascended to rule the Dark Aether. That would explain the power, the promises, and the university line. However, their apparent age throws a bit of a wrench into this. To summarize what we've talked about on the SHADOWSMITHs in some prior videos, the first appearance, like I said, was the ending of Modern Warfare Zombies in the Ascension mission. The entity, a dark copy of Ava Jansen that we've been battling with the entire game, warns the Deadbolt Strike team that taking it down will draw the attention of worse forces, the SHADOWSMITHs, who will come for Ava upon her defeation. The entity was seemingly protecting Ava and keeping them at bay, not an evil entity like we once assumed, and us defeating her allowed the SHADOWSMITHs to take her. And then, in the ending cutscene, we see her yang through the mirror in 2021 by a shadowy, prima materia looking misty cloaked figure, standing on Richtofen's mansion roof in the Dark Aether. As you can see, the dome structure clearly matches, and the mirror being the very same one from Richtofen's bedroom. The important thing to note here is the entity paints them as stronger than itself, suggesting they outrank even the Forsaken or the SAM AI in the Dark Aether hierarchy. What stands out most for our current discussions is their age and mastery. Everything we've learned about the SHADOWSMITHs screams ancient, like the old one Spragmos mentions on the ancient parchment paper for the Crystal Axe, beings warring since the Dark Aether's dawn. Compare the age to, say, Cortifex from Vanguard. He's born, kills his parents, takes their empire, but that empire even existing means society was already around for some time. This meaning the old ones predate him and the demon peers, likely by eons. If the SHADOWSMITHs are those old ones, their mastery over the Dark Aether, wielding prima materia like it's their birthright, makes sense. That, however, does throw quite the wrench in them having ever been human or gone to university somehow. Aside from the fact that maybe the Dark Aether has universities, but I think it would be weird for Trek to bring that up if it's not something important. If that's not the case, there are a couple of other ways this could end up making sense. 1. The SHADOWSMITHs are a society/group as old as the Dark Aether itself, or at least very early on in its inception, but do have the ability to add other beings to their ranks. Then, the one Panos could be talking to could be a relatively new and once human SHADOWSMITH, but their leader, this one in the hat seemingly from Modern Warfare Zombies, may be far higher in the hierarchy and have the power to protect Panos. This would also explain the relatively high level of technology knowledge. After all, the SHADOWSMITHs are plural. They don't seem to be one entity. They are an ancient cabal of beings with an unknown agenda to restore the multiverse. 2. The SHADOWSMITH character in question is that old one, but is also somehow once human. Of course, the issue with that becomes apparent when we remember that Cortifex and Bellicar mention seeing cave people themselves as adults, when they notice the outside world after Tag the Totem.
I don't know how many of your centuries ago it happened, but I remember when we first became aware of your world. Before that, we thought the Dark Aether was, well, everywhere. Then one day, strange items began to appear in my realm. I speak of things like that pack-a-punch device, and the box that spits out guns. They caused quite an uproar among my kind. How do they work? Where do they come from? And what kind of trouble can I stir up over there? I spent several of your lifetimes just catching glimpses through the dimensional veil. I watched you silly things discover agriculture and start a trade route on the basis. So the mechanisms that landed in the Dark Aether must have come from your future. Don't ask me how. Oh, I was too busy playing with your ancestors to care. At first, I got them to see me in campfires, then in pools of water. Later, it was mirrors and then crystal balls. The more civilized you became, the more refined the lens through which we spoke. But there was no crossing over, no visiting in the flesh, so I looked for a way to deepen my contact and my control. I needed an anchor in your reality, a trans-dimensional link so we could really connect. And that's when it hit me. That's when I had the idea for what you now call the artifacts.
This tells us that anyone older than Cortifex and the other Dark Aether entities in Vanguard has to have been from a time before the current universe we are in, as the Dark Aether entities were only made aware of a realm outside of their own when all of the stuff from the old multiverse got thrown into the Dark Aether. The Apothegons knew of the outside realm, but we don't know of any other Dark Aether beings. This would mean that in order for this to make sense, they would have to be ostensibly from the Aether multiverse. So if this is a Shadowsmith who was once a human and is really as old and powerful as they say, it would have to be someone who entered the Dark Aether in the prior multiverse. I think there's a very obvious candidate for who we are all thinking right now. The Shadow Man. But what if it could be Richtofen or someone else working for them? So we go through 3 people, essentially. Could the Shadow Man and or the Shadowsmiths be using Richtofen for their ends? For example, promising him a life outside of the Dark Aether if he just exists as a memory in a liminal space, and they have this potential evil Richtofen getting Panos to do their dirty work. But then at the end, when they get what they want, they betray him, like the Shadow Man did to the Warden of Alcatraz, promising him a salvation to the afterlife. In the Warden's case, hell itself, due to him being a demonic worshipper. It could be similar to Primus Richtofen's whole arc of this me. This me. And that made him perpetuate the cycle at the cost of the universe. This new Richtofen could again want to be this me. He could want a life.
I want to be me.
This way, the contact could essentially be both a new Richtofen and the Shadow Man and or Smiths in some way. We did say before the Shadowsmiths could enlist people to their ranks as well. Could this new version of Richtofen next year even already have submitted themselves to their faction? Especially considering his personal diary says he is going to have to burn for it with all their body and soul. This ritual could be how you are chosen. And the rituals we complete on Shattered Veil with each of the characters within the liminal spaces to empower the sentinel artifacts with prima materia literally mirrors exactly how we harvest the souls with the summoning key in the Shadows of Evil rituals. The process is one-to-one the same. Their bodies lift up above the artifact in the exact same fashion. This again has to be another intentional nod. Maybe even if the contact is the Shadow Man / Smiths, they've been speaking to Janus Richtofen, promising him a way to bring back his family with prima materia, only for them to F him over in the end, or even he gets them but at a cost to the universe. We know the Shadow Man / Smiths from the COD 2025 leaks are interested in harnessing the original character's essence, which makes me wonder if these particular individuals might disappear. However, they resemble copies existing in liminal spaces. Think of Shem, Colton, and others like them. We've been discussing essence as if it's a personification of a specific moment in time, something incredibly esoteric. This concept is literally embedded within Shadows of Evil. Shem and the others may have died in real time, but they remain alive and conscious within those liminal realms. They respond to your actions. They are not just static recordings, even though they've long been gone. That's why the Shadowsmiths are so intent on using their essence. It's similar to how we infused the Sentinel artifact with the energy of the people in the mansion. Now, they want to replicate that process process with the entire original crew. But if the key reason for why the SHADOWSMITHs want to restore the multiverse is bringing back the original characters, that clearly plays a role in how the multiverse is restored to begin with, because they were bonded with the elemental shard. They were literally the lifeblood of the ether itself. The ether doesn't exist without them, they don't exist without the ether. It's paradoxical. So this is clearly why they need to return, because for them to return, it will spring the multiverse back in existence, as they are the multiverse as much as it itself. It's interesting too when Liberty Falls ends with Panos stealing the characters' souls, dooming them, and then quickly running off out of the portal to get on with more pressing matters to meet his friends. This is exactly what Ultimis Richtofen does to the Shadows of Evil crew when he steals the summoning key. He runs off to have a universe to save and doesn't have time to explain. This could suggest a connection with Panos and Richtofen. And even though we saw Nikolai literally shoot Ultimis Richtofen in the head, so I think it's unlikely to be Ultimis Richtofen himself. However, it has me wondering again about his quote about not having a last-minute moment of betrayal, not having a rabbit in his hat in the campfire quotes on Tag the Totem.
As all body. I'm not going to apologize for all the terrible things I have done, because frankly, I'm not sorry for anything. Yeah! I've had the time of my life! No, I know you'll probably never really trust me, and even now, you'll be expecting me to pull some last-minute rabbit out of a hat. A big rabbit of betrayal.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thank you, Dennis. I knew I could rely on you. So, do you have a rabbit of betrayal? If I'm honest, I've been expecting one since we all got together. Sadly, no. I am all out of rabbits.
Because maybe that was in fact a lie and he had a plan all along to somehow still be alive, potentially even related to the promise he made to the Shadow Man long ago.
You do know that Richtofen is a friend of mine. I say friend, but really he's so much more than that. At one point, I almost considered him my apprentice. I mean, he did stab my reporter friend and steal the summoning key. But at one point, he did everything I told him to. I keep hoping he'll remember the promise he made to me so long ago.
To secure safety for them both in this new universe, explaining the connection between why Mr. Peaks is now replaced Samantha's bunny in the mystery box and has an emote depicting it being pulled from the hat, and having seemingly been bonded with the soul of Richtofen's son Samuel, the red orb in the second Outbreak quest, described as keeping the boy safe in the dark place and living in his hat. Could Ultimis Richtofen even be inside Mr. Peaks and the soul for it? Or be his childhood toy? I mean, Ultimis Richtofen did hear many voices of corruption when touching the MPD. This wasn't just the Shadow Man, which means that if the SHADOWSMITHs are different to the Shadow Man himself, then could he have been waiting for this day all along and hearing of them too, building to this moment? When Richtofen became in control of the ether, he saw all of time at once and all possibilities, as if he read the chronorium without doing so directly. That was his writing in his diary. It essentially was his own chronorium that corrupted the minds and gnawed and clawed at his mind or anyone who would read his book. Could this then make Ultimis Richtofen seem like a chess-playing genius who had this all played out all along? That would be absolutely crazy, but it would be fun to tie this all the way back to the original story. But I think this idea is unlikely that we see Ultimis Richtofen again. Like I say, in order to not undo the chaos of it all, I think it has to be a new version to not undo the point of Tag the Totem's ending, although it very much feels like it already is. But like I say, we're gonna have to wait and see how Trek actually do it. Hopefully it's not undebaked and they do it justice in a way that doesn't feel contrived. And obviously I think Ultimis Richtofen is unlikely to be the contact because he's probably gone. I mean, the character's souls were literally bonded to the elemental shard, so shouldn't exist anymore, to be honest. But we know they're coming back with Core 2025, but likely in liminal spaces. They're probably going to explain how this is something different to them being properly alive, but regardless, that way those versions could technically, I guess, exist within liminal spaces. I'm not sure. I just hope they get it right so that it doesn't feel like Tag the Totem's ending was pointless. But this discussion on this contact potentially being the Shadow Man is going to get very deep very quickly, so I'm going to save this for a part 2, which you should expect very, very soon. Right now, the likely candidates for PANOS' contact are COD 2025's alternate version of Richtofen himself, meaning the original characters may already exist in liminal spaces, the SHADOWSMITH, and or the Shadow Man. Potentially, they could all even be the same if there is a Shadow Man and SHADOWSMITH connection, and they are not just a completely new faction, and Richtofen could even be doing their bidding. The university line is the thing that throws the spanner in the mix. If we didn't get the university line, I would definitely think this was 100% just the SHADOWSMITH, or the Shadow Man, or they are one and the same. I'm just struggling right now to figure out how the university line plays into things. But let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to get a better idea of what the community is thinking about this contact, and it might help even putting together the part 2, but make sure you stay tuned on the channel so you're ready for when it releases. I genuinely do read most of my comments quite often to get good story ideas from. I don't always have the chance to respond to everything, but I am always reading. So let me know who you think PANOS is talking to and what this could mean for the future. And what do you think of the SHADOWSMITH? Who do you think they are? Do you think there is a connection with the Shadow Man, not just visually? I will see you soon with that next video talking about how the Shadow Man may be back. And regardless of if the SHADOWSMITHs are new, they are essentially a new Shadow Man anyways, and are clearly meant to match the Shadow Man and be a red herring to us if it doesn't end up being the Shadow Man himself. Visually, how they talk, how they lure people. I'll see you soon with part 2. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not here for latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.